It's Mike Brennan. We're back with another several segments on MITech TV. And we have Michael Van Steenburg with us today. I haven't met Michael before. He's the CEO of Modal Motors, and he's heavily involved in the automotive scene, I guess we could safely say. What other markets do you play in, Michael?
Drones and robotics. They're big businesses for us. So,
Okay, great. So let us go ahead and start with and of course we have co-host Matt Roush, who's different sort of setup today. Normally we do speaker view, but I made the mistake of updating my Zoom and they changed a few things on me. So we'll work with what we got. So anyway, Michael, China has technologically colonized the world by almost cornering the global market of rare earth magnets for electric motors. How can the USA compete in this electric motor sector?
it's a good question, and what it basically boils down to is China's kind of last couple decades has run rampant all over the globe, buying up mineral rights, buying mining companies, these types of things for all these rare earth minerals. And these things affect really all walks of life, not just electric motors, but their batteries, there's and electronics, solar panels, those types of things. And so basically, so the U.S. in order for the U.S. to compete, it has to reprioritize these kinds of technologies that are focused on rare earth minerals, because it's not that we don't have them. They're in the ground, but permitting can take 10 to 15 years to get a mine up and running. There are some of our neighbors in Mexico, for example. Canada has some too, and in Central and South America. In fact, some of the biggest deposits of these rare earth minerals are actually in our own backyard in Central and South America.
Hmm. All right. So China has been the lowest cost manufacturing center for American companies. Reshoring's been a buzzword for quite a while now. How do we reliably and cost effectively make these things in America again in order to compete with China?
And the way to do that is actually not to do a race to the bottom. And even China is now finding it hard to make things by hand. You're seeing China's intentionally moving to automation. I think Jim Farley went over and visited several dark factories over there where they're literally building vehicles, complete systems in full dark factories. And so the way to do that is not to sit there and reshore old industries, basically, that we've kind of pushed off to China, is to rethink the way manufacturing should be done here in the US. And what that means is a lot of automation. It means training people for highly skilled jobs. So therefore their work effort is multiplied through robotics, cobots, some people say. And then also paying attention to every little bit of waste. In our motors, for example, we worked very hard to get to zero waste in building the motors. And China still, with their motors, they still throw away a lot of materials in making them. So that's one way the U.S. can do, is just paying attention to all those little details like that, and not basically designing yourself into an old world manufacturing method.
So, how did Modal Motors get invented?
Well, about 13 years ago, I was looking at this new technology. It's called transverse flux, and it's there's all these different types of fluxes in electric motors. You may be familiar with radial flux, which is kind of, I'd say, 90% of the market plus, and then axial flux motors, which are maybe only 2%. They're gaining steam, but there's a lot of hype around axial flux. You may have heard about YASA setting a record recently for power density. And then Koenigsegg has their dark matter motor, all these, and those are all axial flux type motors. But a transverse flux motor is just different. And the basics of it, it's actually, you only need to have one winding per phase. So a three-phase motor's only got 3 windings as opposed to 36 windings in a competitor motor, as an example. And so in this transverse flux motor, I started looking at it because it seems so simple. And but obviously things that look simple often require a lot of background work, a lot of research, and which is exactly what we found. That's why 13 years later, we're going into production with our motors today.
Hmm. Okay.
What are the major market segments you are targeting?
We started to do ground vehicle type applications, kind of what you're alluding to earlier, but very quickly the drone customers started flooding us. And what that came down to is I think in April of 2025, the Trump administration finally banned the Chinese T motors which was supplying most of the commercial drone manufacturers here in the U.S. And that ban went into full effect in October. So obviously losing a key supplier like that by having the no China mandate in these defense drones is basically driving customers to us. But now very quickly, what's interesting is the robotics guys are catching up. And so the wheeled land vehicle type application has kind of fallen back to the third burner, so to speak. And now robotics are catching up to drones. And so it basically it's everyone who needs to have a Buy America, in their portfolio, because if they're supplying the Department of Defense, or anyone who needs to compete at the most extreme level, so which is where humanoid robotics are.
All right. So what challenges do you see specific to Michigan in terms of building an electric motor industry here?
It's well, this industry is designed. It's for very high volume type applications, automotive, of course, and in automotive, the way the supplier relationship works. I was talking to someone else about this earlier today. Is that some of the suppliers have gotten so beat down with their profit margins, 6 to 8%, profit margins on parts, and so when you're starting a motor company here, you got to watch out for those types of, I guess I'll call them onerous type of requirements that come from some very large manufacturers, and then also what we're doing, we're going fully automated with our manufacturing, so we'll have a full Industry 4.0 dark facility here, and so I look at not training people so much to do the poka yoke type mechanism to assemble motors, even though assembling our motor by hand by a human is very short. It's only like 4 times as long as a robot does. But it's you still want to let the robots kind of work 24/7, 3 shifts, that kind of thing, and then basically train people to be high valued technicians. So they make a much greater livable wage. They're able to watch machines and make sure the machines are doing what they're supposed to do, and not have to get so much into the weeds with actually making motors. And so Michigan, that's something that Michigan's not used to, thinking of something like that, because, obviously we're a very strong union state, and labor wants to be involved in those decisions. And so basically changing that paradigm is a kind of a challenge here.
All right. So, how does somebody reach out to you if they want to find out more about Modal Motors?
So our website, www.modal, Motors, Motors.com. That's the easiest way to reach out there. You kind of see our website, see some of the stuff we're doing. We're not selling motors to the public right now. We're doing basically B2B, so going straight to OEMs. And like I said, our whole drive is basically to enable Michigan manufacturers that are in e-mobility or equipment or anything that uses an electric motor, and to enable those companies to compete on a global scale with China.
So how many employees do you have now, and are you looking for more at this point?
We are. So we're at like 11 or 12 right now. We're looking for everybody from project managers to, of course, robotic techs is really good. There's we're using some Fanuc systems right now. So anybody out there who's done programming with Fanuc robots and SCAR robots, those types of things. Obviously, engineers, mechanical engineers, junior mechanical, electrical engineers, e-motor guys who know electromagnetics. So we're doing a big ramp rate. So we figure we'll be going from where 11 we are now to possibly 40 by the end of the year. So.
Okay. And the help wanted ads are also at the Modal Motors website, I would imagine.
I think so. They're also on Indeed. So Indeed.com, they're on there.
So tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be CEO of this company.
Yeah, so I started my first company. I was 22, and I picked a real easy thing, advanced composite unibody, and I believe it or not, I've done like 5 or 6 of those programs, full vehicle programs like that. And after doing what some people call at the time black art type stuff, somebody said, "Well, you make these lightweight vehicles. Well, there's this new thing called hybrid electric, and this is like in the late 90s, and so I was a hot rodder, gearhead, and building engines, doing all these. I've done custom motorcycles, a lot of SEMA show vehicles, those types of things, and so for me, it's like a hybrid. What is that? It's a but the first time I built one of the first hybrids on the road in the U.S. that's out of any other major OEM. And Sandy Monroe drove it back then. He was just blown away, by the amount of torque that it had, and I was hooked just because of that instant torque, being a hot rodder. So And as you go along, from doing hybrid systems, obviously you start migrating towards battery electric. But even though everybody right now, we should all be driving hybrids already, and while the battery electrics are getting more refined, you know, but that's something that our government kind of missed the ball on, about 20 years ago to start making a big incentive for that. But yeah, so then after doing over all these years, I've done a lot of work for all the OEMs here in Detroit, in Europe. I did complete vehicles for the People's Republic of China. That was that hybrid vehicle I did. So and then even gotten into aerospace stuff with aircraft parts, and then supplying a lot of boutique auto manufacturers like Celine Performance, Shelby American, companies like that.
Okay. Well, once again, folks, it is Modal Motors. That's Modal. The website is modalmotors.com, and he is Michael Van Steenburg, and he's the CEO. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to get us out in front of everybody out there.